Hi, and welcome to Week 10, Part 2 of English 1302. For the next few minutes, I want to go over with you some of the aspects of Robert Frost, his personal life, and some of his poems. Be sure that you've watched the video and you've reviewed and taken notes over the PowerPoint that's posted up on the course for you. There's lots of information there. In fact, over the years, I've kind of distilled it down, I've condensed it down to just the essential parts. Robert Frost is a very famous American poet, probably the most famous poet of all time, and his nickname is the Poet of New England, because that's not where he's from. Well, technically that's where he's from, but that's really the subject matter of his poetry, is he writes a lot about the beauty of the nature around New England. Now, he was born in New England, but then he was raised in San Francisco from a young lad until he's about 11 years old. When his father died, his mother moves back home, raises her two children there, and so he's really more of a California person growing up than he is from New England. But he loves to write about the beauty of the nature of New England. As you look at his biography, that very limited biography there, you'll notice a couple of interesting features. First of all, he had a pretty ordinary childhood, but then when he graduates high school, now he was homeschooled, but once he graduates, he is admitted to Dartmouth, which is a very exclusive private school, very hard to get in, but he got in, but stayed less than a year. Didn't graduate from Dartmouth. And we're not sure exactly what happened. He had trouble with grades, had trouble with finances. We don't know exactly for sure. He went back to living life. Then, just a few years later, he applied for and was admitted to Harvard, again, the most exclusive college in America, where he stayed for 2 years but never graduated. So he's able to get into these really exclusive colleges, but doesn't manage to graduate from either one. Don't worry, he turns out good. He gets lots of honorary college degrees and awards and honors and stuff like that. The next thing to notice about Robert Frost is, as a young married man, he receives an inheritance when his maternal grandfather dies, his mother's father dies, and leaves him a farm. But there's a stipulation. In order to own the farm outright, he has to stay on the farm and work the farm for 10 years. Apparently, Robert Frost was not a good farmer, or he didn't seem to enjoy it very much because he had to teach to supplement his farming income. And as soon as the farm became outright his, he sold it and moved to England. Okay, that's pretty remarkable. Doesn't seem to enjoy the farming life very much. But he moves to London, where he knows through correspondence some fairly famous poets and poetry editors. And when he gets there and gets settled in and gets established, something very remarkable happens that we don't see happen very often at all. And that is, he becomes successful almost instantly. He's almost an overnight success. His poems, he published a book of poems called North of Boston, and it's just really good, and everybody really seems to enjoy it, and he sells a lot of copies, and guess what he does? He moves back to America, back to New Hampshire, and he buys a farm. Now, this farm is way different than the farm he had before. The farm he had before was a working farm. You have to go out and milk the cows and slop the pigs and feed the goats. This farm is much more of a gentleman farm. It's got a pretty red barn, it's got a white picket fence, it's got rolling green pastures. If there's any work to be done, he hires somebody to do that work. It's more of an inspirational setting than anything else for him. But he comes back and he just continues being successful, very successful. Something to watch out for is when you look at the PowerPoint, it makes careful note of all the deaths in his family, in his life. His oldest son, named Carol, committed suicide. His mother died. He has another daughter die. He's, of course, his grandparents. He's got lots of death, but that's not really one of the main factors in his life. That's not one of the things that influences him most. Now, I know that one of his themes is death, entropy, and extinction, but that's not really the focus of a lot of his poems. He's really much more nature and the inspiration, the beauty of nature, what we can learn from nature, much more stuff like that. So anyway, he comes back to America. He lives on this farm in Derry, New Hampshire. It's not a dairy farm. Derry's the name of the town. And he begins producing lots and lots of poems, which he had probably been working on back when he was a farmer. These poems don't write themselves overnight. And so he begins publishing and gets really, really popular here in America as well as England. Then, for a period of about 20 years, Robert Frost gets all these awards and honors. He's recognized. He's given honorary doctorates from different universities. I think he gets 4 Pulitzer Prizes, and just very, very widely honored and recognized and awarded, and just very, very well known. He would travel to colleges and give readings and answer questions about his poems. But he's also like a living, breathing contradiction, because while he spoke to large crowds, he was basically an introvert. He was basically a family guy who loved staying home with his wife and kids, but went out all the time. And he had lots of very interesting parts to his life. He lived a nice long life. He died. His last public appearance was as the poet laureate at John F. Kennedy's inauguration. So he lived, 89 years? A pretty long time. Let's talk real quickly about his themes. Now, there's a PowerPoint slide with these on it, but as you read his poems, you want to look for main ideas, which is the poems boiled down to its essence. Main ideas like limitations and isolation of the individual, the difficulty of understanding existence. Robert Frost was not an atheist, but neither was he a strong Christian. At least judging by his poems, they aren't strongly religious poems. He talked a lot about death and entropy and extinction. He talked about youth and the loss of innocence. He talked about nature as a source of wisdom and everyday life. When we look at poems like Acquainted with the Night, where a guy, ostensibly, probably Robert Frost himself, the poet, talks about walking out in the rain and back in rain, and he's out walked the furthest of the night. That's all about isolation. That's all about, it could be depression, it could be some serious thing going on in life. It could just be a desire to be alone. But that's a powerful examination of the isolated individual. We talk about a poem called Out Out, which is a young boy, 11 years old, who gets his hand cut off. The surgeon tries to save his life by putting him under anesthetic. Unfortunately, it's 1940s, and their understanding of anesthesia was pretty limited. They gave him too much, and he died, not from the loss of blood, although that was a contributing factor, but from too much anesthesia. But the last line of that poem is the truly sad part. It says, and they, talking about the doctor, the nurse, and the sister, and they, because they were not the ones dead, returned to their work. What that means is grief is very brief. People's impact on our lives is less than we recognize. So study that poem with kind of a thought toward that area. We talk about The Road Not Taken, which is all about making decisions. We'll take a look at Stopping by Woods, which is just a fun little iambic pentameter poem with rhyming couplets, and it's just, whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. Just a delightful little poem. And then Fire and Ice is probably the shortest poem we'll do this semester. It's about the end of the world, where fire represents strong emotion and ice represents complete lack of emotion or complete indifference. And he says, personally, what's going to kill the world, what's going to destroy the world. A lot of people say strong emotion, they say fire, but I think it's going to be just indifference or not caring. But then he finishes the poem by saying, although from what I've seen of fire, I hold with those who favor, from what I've seen of strong desire, I hold with those who favor fire. So he's kind of back and forth on that one. Next week, week 11, we'll be talking about after apple picking and birches, mending wall, the runaway, and of course, dust of snow. Now, like I told you last time, please don't think that you're going to get a good grasp of this just by glancing over it once or twice. You really need to read it. You need to look up the words you don't know. You need to read it different ways, silently, out loud, standing up, sitting down. Read it to your pet. Read it to yourself. Watch your YouTube videos. YouTube videos are very, very helpful in understanding this. Especially, there's a group of poems called My Favorite Poem Project. And those seem to, as a group, as a category, those seem to be the best developed, the best thought out explanations of poetry that I've run across. So go look those poems up, read them carefully, answer the discussion questions. Now, a lot of the discussion posts are going to say answer it with a quote, and then be sure to cite it, which is just the author's last name and the line number from the poem, and then explain about the quote. But if you'll do that, it will help you to understand it better. And if you have any questions, ask.